This year, the SelfSeed was brought to you in collaboration with many brands, but I would like to humbly, greatly appreciate OC Outdoor Products for sponsoring this season of the SelfSeed Podcast. And if you've been listening to the podcast, you know that there are many companies, many brands that have supported OC all this season. So to all of you, also thank you. And you can learn more about the brand sponsor, about the podcast sponsors on the sponsor page on selfseed.transistor.fm, the sponsor page /sponsors, and you'll see the sponsors of the SelfSeed Podcast. So yeah, keep going, keep growing, and let's share the great news. Hey everyone, welcome back to the SelfSeed Podcast. And I think you're wondering why we are. I know you're not wondering. I mean, it's already another Tuesday, but by the grace of God, this is like the last Tuesday of the year, and probably when you're listening to this, it's December 31st. Yeah, this is December 31st. So, yep. Today's podcast is one of those podcast episodes where I just want to look at how the year has been and see how God has been great this year. I know you're all wondering why I'm looking down. Well, I'm looking at the introduction of the season 3 on Spotify. If you haven't yet subscribed to that, remember to listen on Spotify. It's available on all platforms. And so when we were starting this season, I just wanted to share new voices to the podcast, because I wrote that this year we are shaking things up. We're not just talking about self-improvement and personal development anymore. We are bringing in the heavy hitters, experts, influencers, everyday heroes who have conquered their mountains and learned to dance in the valleys. So get ready for a masterclass in personal growth, delivered firsthand by the people who have walked and sometimes stumbled the path. This is season 3 of the SelfSeed Podcast with your host Emmanuel. Why am I saying with it? Anyways, and so reflecting on that, this was about, I think it was around January 2, the first episode premiered, and it was just an introduction to the new voices that will be appearing on the podcast. And looking back, this is the 52nd episode, so means all 52 weeks of the year have had its episode. And I would just like to thank God. The first thing I would just like to thank God, because it hasn't been smooth. There are times where I didn't feel like recording. I didn't feel like I didn't have people were not willing to join in to come be featured, to be on the episodes. But some of them had emergencies, some of them had challenges. We had challenges with the recording on platforms, like using Zoom, using VooV meeting for international, but in China using Tencent meeting sometimes. But greatest thing that I'm grateful for is I got to learn a lot of stuff from different people. We had entrepreneurs, we have had authors, we have had founders of companies, we have had entrepreneurs in general. We have had wellness experts on this platform, fitness coaches, nutritional coaches. I mean, which blessing have I not had in this year? So I just wanted us to take a moment to reflect on that, and then we will look into how 2025 would maybe be, by the grace of God, how it would start and all that. And so if you're new to the podcast, remember the SelfSeed Podcast is available on selfseed.transistor.fm, or you can just search on any platform that you listen your podcast from. Especially if you're in East Africa, you can listen on Rifali. If you're on other parts of the world, I mean, East Africa is not entitled to only Rifali there, but I mean, yeah, it's also available there, like the local podcast platform. All over Africa, we have AfriPods. It's on AfriPods. We have Good Pods. We are on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube. I bet that right now maybe you're watching on YouTube. We are on which other platform? I mean, this year it has gone to many more, apart from having our own website, but it has gone more places, and I would like to also thank those who have truly and consistently tuned in tune into the podcast, because looking at the stats, when I looked at the Spotify Wrapped 2024. Yeah, Wrapped 2024 by Spotify. I saw that the SelfSeed Podcast was favorite to maybe 4 of the listeners, top podcast for some listeners, good on performing well in US and all that. And our podcast was was evaluated to be like a storyteller, like the attitude of the host and all that, like the charisma and all that. I don't know what I forgot, but yeah, a storyteller. And so it's all thanks to you guys. Thanks for constantly tuning in and listening to this conversation. Some of you have left comments, have always told me in person, and so I am really, really grateful. I'm really, really grateful for you guys tuning in, and I hope the next year even becomes better and better. And so first thing first, let's listen to the introduction of of the episode. It's like 7 minutes, but I'm going to try and run on it. So yeah, let's listen. I'll just put this on the mic. We are officially kicking off the season 3 of the podcast. And maybe let me tell you that the energy out here is electric. So this year we are shaking things up, and we're not just talking about self-improvement or personal development only. No, we are bringing in the heavy hitters. And what do we mean by the heavy hitters? We have experts, we are going to have influencers, and everyday heroes who have accepted the challenge and have conquered their mountains, and they have learned to dance in the valleys. And so, initially, like bringing the heavy hitters, I didn't mean only people who are famous or people who are just doing great and all that, but it is people who, when they tell their stories, because I believe every story matters, right? And so the people that I envision is everyone who has a story. I mean, everyone who has a story to share in any aspect, because my podcast is not only it's a personal development podcast, so it touches almost all areas of a person's life. So you might have a story that you share with others, and that is valuable to someone else, and it will probably be useful if someone else gets to hear it. And so it has been a great thing, because the heavy hitters have really come on the podcast. I've had leadership coaches, I've had authors, I've had wellness experts, I've had a nutritional coach and a fitness coach, I've had a YouTube content creator, I've had another podcast host. I mean, most of the people who have come to the podcast are also having their own podcast. I've had Sangin Podcast, JP from Sangin Podcast. Diano also has his own podcast. Christian also has his own podcast. Who else? Many people who have come, they also have things going on, and I think they use this as a platform to reach out to another person and just share the good things that they're doing. And furthermore, because I think online we probably don't see behind the scenes, we don't really get to know the people, and so them coming on and me asking the questions which I asked. I mean, some of them are unexpected questions, but it got to let us know about people, about different people. And so if you missed any part of the podcast, I mean, it's not bad, but you should listen from the first episode. And so I'll start looking at episode. The first one I did was a book discussion, The Purpose Driven Life by we did Purpose Driven Life. Was it the book with I did it with Rachel, and this was, we were talking about how we can live a purpose-driven life, and it was a powerful episode because we discussed in detail about the book, and Miss Rachel shared about her thoughts about how she resonated with the book, how she applies the principles mentioned there. And yeah, by the way, the Purpose-Driven Life book is a 40-day kind of manual workbook, and so you have to do it every day. And I got it for my friends, and I think it helped them. Yeah, and then the third episode was development from different perspectives with JP, uh, and John Paul shared a lot of stuff because he's the CEO of Sangin Media and Sangin Events, and he interviews a lot of people, African diaspora, and he shares stories about development, especially from a different perspective, like the African perspective. How can we develop our motherland? How can we improve the lives of young people there? How can young people as well adopt a mindset that is different? How is a mindset that is unique and all that? And then episode 4 came where we talked with Ella Mary Taylor. And so this episode with Ella Mary Taylor, who was a student in Shanghai, I think she graduated this year as well, and she has had a couple of internships. She has attended networking events. She has organized as well events in Shanghai, and she shared how we can grow in the workplace, how we can become better, how we can adapt to different changes in the workplace, and she shared how she is doing with her startups, and probably she tried. I remember last time we talked, she had initiated another one, but she eventually put it into halt and all that. And yeah, she talked about her process, her journey, and I think it's a powerful thing. And then in episode 5, I had healthy relationships with Melody Rumbi. I hope when she listens to this, she doesn't hang me for forgetting how to pronounce her name rightly. I mean, I remember Melody, but yeah, we were with Melody, and she shared on how to build healthy boundaries, how we can nurture relationships, because she has a YouTube channel, Happy Healthy Relationships, I think, HHR on YouTube. So don't forget to go and check that one as well. And she talks about relationships, she talks about connections, situationships. She talks about a lot of stuff, I mean, in the relationship zone, in the relationship area. And then episode 6 was with Eunice Joram, where we talked about holistic well-being, where you have to balance between your spiritual well-being, your physical well-being, and all that, and being able to draw the line. She talked about how meditating, she talks about journaling and all that, and I think these have been powerful episodes. And so far, I think that episode, it was conversation that were helping me understand things in from different perspectives, because you usually have understand things from your perspective, but if someone else challenges your perspective, because I mean, not all people who we had on the podcast, we have totally agreed on everything, but we have done that constructive criticism where we are able to say, okay, it's not like that, but I agree, but I agree, and somehow it could be done this way and all that. And so it has been a powerful journey. And then on episode I think it was episode 6, episode 6 we had episode 6 is the one with Eunice, and then episode 7 is 1% Better Every Day with Christian, who is a nutritional coach, and eventually later in the year he opened up his company and just left his other jobs, and he totally focused on just being a nutritional coach, being a fitness trainer, and opened up his company 1% Better Consulting, which we eventually had a collaboration with Aussie Outdoor Products, and we made apparels, we made a collection and all that 1% Better, which lasts to January 18, the sales, and so you can grab yours if you haven't grabbed one yet. And so in that episode we talked about what are the healthy habits that we can do so that we become better every day. So yeah, be sure to check out. He also has a podcast. Christian has a podcast called 1% Better Podcast now. It has been renamed to 1% Better Podcast, and that podcast, he talks about a lot of stuff: his life in China, his entrepreneurship journey, his wellness tips and tricks and all that. And as well, he has a YouTube channel, Christian Francois. Is it Francois? Yeah, but sorry, Christian, I didn't pronounce the last name right. Sorry, my man. And so, and Melody as well. Sorry. Hey. people. How do I miss the names? But yeah, he talks about a lot of stuff. So when he came to the podcast, we really talked that from a youth perspective on how we can become just 1% better, because he carries on this principle of 1% better, and I wanted to pick on how can it be applied to personal development, how can it be applied to our daily lives and all that. And then in episode 8, this was a special episode where I had just a chat with my friends, my family, and it featured Jerry, Freddie, and Edison, and we talked about a lot of stuff, the journey from when we started our friendship, how we have evolved, how we have been able to reason with one another, how we have been able to bear with one another on the challenges and all that, because we honestly, we don't agree on everything, but by God's grace, we have been able to find mutual grounds that we have been able to live on, and it has been a happy relationship. And so that was episode 8. It was called Friends Chosen, Family Found, Stories of Love and Support with Edison, Freddie, and Jerry. And so be sure to listen to that. Actually, that is one of my favorite episodes. So later on I'll try to mention my favorite, but that one as well is one of my favorite episodes on this season. And then later on episode 9, I had my friend Avo, Living with Intention with Irene Avo. Now, all people on this podcast, they are my friends. They are my good friends right now. And so the podcast, in episode 51, just last week, we talked about networking. And I think I have leveraged these friendships, and they have become these just connections and podcast host guests and hosting and all that, and they have become powerful friends. They have become important friends. Even if we were friends before, the relationship has grown. Has improved and all that. And so with Avo, we talked living with intention. We talked about how you're able to choose from between A and B, because you're able to choose something between A and B because you have a reason, because you really want to move down that path, or because you want to remove some things from your life. And so you get to go down the journey of entrepreneurship. Why do you choose from let's say from your studentship and choose to really embark on the entrepreneurship journey? It's because you have the intention, you have the purpose, and you really want to go for it. And so we talked about that. And then episode 10 of the season 3, I was with Irene Linda, who is a YouTube vlogger. She's a YouTube content creator. She's a content creator, yeah. And we talked about the journey from YouTube vlogs to just embracing life challenges, how she deals with situations. So we brought that, the YouTube content creation thing, and then we looked at her personal life. How does she manage all of that? And I think it was a great conversation. And then in episode 11, I had Unlocking Transformation with Jennifer Richards. I mean, if you haven't listened to any of these episodes, I encourage you to try and just put them on your list. Probably it won't take 52 weeks as it took to air them out, but probably in 1 month you might have finished, or even in weeks. You listen while you're running, you listen while you're walking, you're sleeping, you're eating. Sleeping, probably you won't hear the message, but yeah, you can also use it as a sleeping, because I think the voices that have been on this season have been splendid. It wasn't only my voice, so you can listen to it while you're sleeping as well. And I think the essence of how to unlock a transformation, and we talked about the butterfly effect. We talked about the butterfly transformation in this episode. And the thing that I'm grateful for, why I'm grateful for these episodes, because with Christian, I got to do the collection, and then with Jennifer, I got to eventually do the virtual book tour, and we brought in many guests from her virtual book tour. She's the organizer, and she's the founder of Transform Lives Corporation. Is it foundation? But yeah, she has this organization, and so we were able to bring in guests from her roster of authors this year, and we were able to put them on the SelfSeed Podcast. And we talked with these guests for a lot of stuff. a lot of stuff. But with Jennifer in this episode, specifically episode 11, we talked about how you choose intentionally to grow and become something better, and you embrace the challenges that you face for the in the prospect of becoming better and eventually becoming better, just like the life cycle of a butterfly. And in the next episode after that, I invited my friend Matan. And Matan is a therapist. Matan is a practitioner. Matan is a traditional Chinese medicine practitioner from Israel. And he actually, this is just the first episode, but he came again later on the podcast when on the virtual book tour. But this time we talked about using development models to overcome challenges, different development models to overcome challenges. And we looked at his own development model, and we saw how you can use that as, to deal with challenges. And I mentioned my own development model I read, and we saw like all these models were correlating, and we saw how you can use a development model to navigate your challenges in your life, in your current life and all that. So be sure to listen to that, episode 12. And then episode 13, I think I had Rosanna for the first time on the podcast, and she has become a good friend of mine. And Rosanna, we talked about how your mindset can make or break your life. Now, Rosanna always has this video series, if you haven't known, but you can check her story on rosannaho.ca, and she shares these stories of people in the world, how the change in mindset has helped them navigate challenges. Mike Tyson, LeBron, Kobe Bryant, Taylor Swift, and many more. And she talks about this. She's an RTT practitioner. She's a therapist as well. And so if you have anything, just head on to our website and yeah, you'll get that. And I think she shared a lot of insights, and I love it because the next time she came, we talked about, I'll get into it, but we talked about something on the lines of self-care. We talked about something on the line about self-care, and so it was good. And then we talked about reproductive health as well. I invited Denise, who is the founder of Her and I Initiative, and we talked about reproductive health. And yeah, on my side, I was shy and all that, and because I don't, the vocabularies are difficult for me. And so she shared a lot of stuff without covering and all that, some things that are useful in our today's world, especially as young people. You have to pay attention to these things on your reproductive health and all that. And I think it is useful, especially because she is a transparent person, and she talks without covers about what is important, what is important to pay attention to in our reproductive health. And then in the next episode, I invited Faye, who's the founder and creator and the creative director, I think, of 15 Studios, and he's an architect by profession. And we talked about design beyond products. We looked at how everyday life and creativity, how we can bring design into everyday life and creativity. And I think this is another interesting episode, another favorite episode from this podcast, because I am a person who is passionate about creativity, and we talked about that and how we can bring design into just everyday life and all that. And I think it's interesting. So if also you want, you can check 15studios.com as well to see some of their amazing outfits. And right now they're having, I think, the travel, I think something about traveling, but it's outfits, suitcase and bags, and yeah, so be sure to check that the same way you check Aussie. So be sure to check 15 Studios as well. And so the next episode I invited Nicola Lee, who is a friend of Ella Mary Taylor. And in this episode we talked about her life in Shanghai and just how she likes traveling, and we talked about that. And I was interested on how she goes about life, how she tries to explore life, and how different environments help her with challenges. She uses these as kind of retreats to freshen up and all that. And she uses this as a connection with her father and they go on different adventures, and it has been good. And so be sure to listen to that as well. And then I invited my friend Dino, the Delplish. I hope I don't. Why am I not getting the right name? But Dino, we talked with Dino. We talked about how to become a great leader, especially, and a high effective leader. And I love that episode because it teaches about how you can become a great leader, what initiatives you should check and you should choose, and all that. So be sure to check Dino as well on LinkedIn, on Instagram, but mostly LinkedIn if you want to become a highly effective leader. And he shared the 7 steps of becoming a highly effective leader. So be sure to listen to that. And then later on, I invited in episode 18, I had a chat with Amani, who is a great friend of mine and a great researcher, academician. Is it academician? Yeah, academic. Yeah, and we talked about financial literacy, and he taught about the ways of investing. He reminded us of Proverbs. Why does it say of Ecclesiastes? Why it says split 7 times your food 7 times on the surface of water. You never know when it will come to back as useful and all that. And I think this was, and the interesting thing is this episode is the most listened to episode. So thank you to all of you, and shout out to Amani, my friend, for making the podcast interesting this year. And then we had again a conversation with Rosalia Shiweva from Namibia, and we were talking about transforming boundaries into opportunities. She talked about her life in China. She talked about how she became better and better and better after throughout time and all that. And then I had Kizwalo Simbila, where we talked about mental health for everyone, where we talked about building essentials for mental health, and we saw how he uses What to Connect, his entrepreneurship endeavor, to advocate for mental health in Tanzania, and later on he embarks to transform this to the whole Africa, to the whole world. And we talked also a little bit about School Biz Network, which is his platform as well for accessing opportunities and all that. And we talked about the power of community in building mental health awareness. And then later I invited Alicia, who Asp, who's a creative coach, and we looked at how to unlock your creative potential. We looked at 3 keys for sustaining creativity. Interesting. And then furthermore, this year we celebrated 4 years of the podcast. And so thank you very much, guys, if you're listening to this podcast, thank you for just pressing that button and saying, let it play on the background and all that. Thank you very much. If you have followed this podcast, if you have downloaded episodes, if you are listening every Tuesday, thank you, and God bless you for being part of this amazing journey for the past 4 years. And then later I invited my friend Mandara, and then we talked about monetizing your art, protecting your work, and find inspiration in everything you do. And we talked about arts, and Mandara made it beautiful on why he does the art that he does, and the reasons behind and the motive behind, and I think it was beautiful. And then later on I had one of my mentors, Adina Deaku, who we talked about understanding the influence of our environments. And it was this time that I was doing an apprenticeship at Tian May's World Academy. So be sure to check out Tian May's World Academy, and you just get to know how our environments affect our choices, how our environment affects our decisions, our habits, and eventually how the environment just affects our lifestyle in general. So be sure to listen to that episode, and furthermore read more from the Tian May Academy, tianmaysworldacademy.com. Be sure to read more about the Tian May Academy. And then later on I did 10 surprising facts about personal development, which was episode 20 something. And then later on I did a great social media detox and personal development challenges, I invited Jerry to the podcast, who is a content creator as well, a friend of mine, and we talked a lot about how the world today is. We talked about contemporary issues, so be sure to listen to that. And then we started the visual book tour, and the visual book tour lasted for 3 months, I think, from July to September, if not October. And I had authors such as Nadine K. Thompson, I had Alicia Anderson, I had Ruth O. Haule, and I had Dr. Sophia N. Morgan, I had Sean C. Harrison, I had Miss Jennifer Williams, and then I had what was her name? Yolande Dean, and then we had The Power Within, where we talked about we talked with Patrice T. Christie, and then we talked with Shepo, who is a good friend of mine now. Shepo, brother, hey, shout out to you for tuning in, for coming to the podcast. We talked about the silver lining. And then Matan, my friend Matan, already came again to the podcast, and we talked about this is why people should invest, why you should invest in yourself. And then I have a untold love story with Nicole. We talked about Nicole, and we talked much, and she has her own pet podcast, and so be sure to tune in to our podcast as well. And then we almost finished the podcast with Yassine Simpson Coburn, where we talked about the art of and craft of teaching, and especially teaching boys and all that. And so be sure to listen to the virtual book tour as well if it's interesting. On the selfseed.transistor.fm, you can see the virtual book tour. It has its own tab, so be sure to click on that and listen to the episodes in there. And then I had again after a long time in September, I invited again Rosanna to the podcast, where we talked about self-care, and we try to remove the myth of it being a selfish trait and that it is only dedicated to maybe a specific gender and all that. But yeah, we talked about why it's not selfish if you do self-care and how to do it, the proper steps. And then I had a friend of mine, Zach, again come to the he had come to the podcast, and we talked the surprising truth about success that nobody tells you. And Zach has been building communities and monetizing communities and all that. He built the Shanghai business community, and then later he couldn't come back to China. He left late this year he left China, and now I think he's in Georgia, and he has another community there. He tried to create a community for pet owners. He created a community for business owners. So it's interesting how you can listen to these people's stories and all that. And then I invited Christian again to the podcast, and we talked about what physical fitness should be about, and we debunked very much, because I'm a fitness trainer and he's a fitness trainer, and so we debunked much about what physical fitness should be. So be sure to tune in to that as well. And I had my friend Daniel on the podcast after Christian, and Daniel, we shared how he told me how he achieves his most ambitious goal. He shared his perspective and all that. And Daniel is a designer. He's a graphic designer. He said he wants to professionalize to be a professional in colors, and so he's a color specialist. Yeah, so be sure to listen to that and tune in to go visit his Instagram, and you will know what I'm talking about. Yeah, Daniel Dubé. And then I had mastering content creation, storytelling challenges, and the AI impact, where I invited his name was a friend of mine, Aziz. I invited him to the podcast, and we talked much about storytelling and how the good ways on doing that. And then later I had a friend of mine, Sreyan Kanungo. Sreyan joined us, and I think this is another favorite podcast episode, because we talked about mastering soft skill in the AI era, especially communication and critical thinking. And I like communication, I like networking, I like talking, I like public speaking, and so I think this was another episode of mine which was favorite. And we talked about a lot of things on how children can become better, how as a young person you can develop your public speaking skills. And so be sure to listen to that, because as you already know, the podcast is interesting this year. And then later on I came and talked about what does it really what does it really take to change and grow, and I gave a little bit of wisdom. And then I talked about how to overcome the fear of failure again on the next episode. And then later on, I had a friend of mine from Australia, Justin, who is the founder of MMA Refuge MMA. Sorry, I spoke that opposite. Refuge MMA in Shanghai, where he teaches kids martial arts and all that. And so he's also a consultant, and he talked about startups from ideation to launching and scaling. So be sure to listen to that if you're into startups, because there are some gems in it. There are some beautiful germs in it. Gems, not germs. Hey, English bro. Anyways, yeah, be sure to listen to that, and I hope you'll get something that can help you in your startup journey. And then later I came to talk about the book Still Like an Artist by Austin Kleon, and I think I talked about how you can do it, because we initially highlighted it in the podcast episode with Faye, and then we later came to talk on this aspect of stealing like an artist with Alicia Asp, and then now I just got to talk about the book. And then later on I talked about the book of Nehemiah from the Bible, and we talked about the leadership lessons inside that book. And I hope if you're a good leader, be sure to listen to that, because it's fresh wisdom. It's fresh wisdom from the book of Nehemiah. And then I had a chat with my another friend, Chinese friend, John. And with John, we talked about WeChat, BYD. We talk about WeChat, WhatsApp, Tesla, BYD. Just a fun and question and answer with John. And so I hope you enjoyed. And last, before episode 51, the episode 50, I talked to Michael McLean, who is an 8-figure entrepreneur, and we talked about business without excuses, how to get it all done. And so that's a wrap for 2020. And after Michael McLean is where I came back and talked about networking as a student. So I don't know about you guys. I would love to hear your feedback. I would love to hear your point of view about how this season has been, but it has been interesting to my end, because I've learned a lot of stuff. I've learned a lot of stuff in business, in entrepreneurship, in writing, book writing, and just personal writing, journaling. I've learned about a lot about my journey of content creation. I've learned a lot about my public speaking skills. I've learned a lot about the challenges, the feeling of transformation, the way that I would feel when I see change and all that. And so I think, as Christian likes to say it, 1% better. I have grown 1% better this year. And so I hope you can tune in. And now to the most important part, which I wanted to do it, my favorite episodes for this year. PS, or a disclaimer. Now, saying my favorite episode doesn't mean I disregard all other episodes that we have done on this podcast this year, or even the previous season. I don't disregard all of them, because all of them are my favorite, but I just want to simplify for you. If I was to recommend where for you to start on this season, if you're doing a review, or if you haven't listened before, I just want to recommend maybe the top, let's say 3 or 5. What do you guys think? 3 or 5? Anyways, I think 5 will do. All right. So the first awesome episode that I like from this season. I hope I don't end up being biased. I hope I don't end up being biased, or the authors, the friends of mine, the new associates or colleagues, I hope they don't feel bad. But this is just to give you as a listener a quick way to do a recap for this year, or to listen to some interesting episodes this year. And so the first one is the purpose-driven life, which I did is episode 2 with Rachel Edson. And we talked about the purpose-driven life. And why do I think this is my favorite? And this list is not in a manner of like who is the first. No, I just said my favorite if you are to start listening to the podcast. So there's no number 1 or number 5. Sorry. And so why do I say this one is my favorite? Because I've read this book, The Purpose-Driven Life, and I think it transformed my thinking for this year, because I read it in in the end of last year, was it? Or January, I think. So it transformed my way of thinking about life and all that, and it grounded me on the principles of a Christian purposeful life, living a purposeful life as a Christian, as a young person, who in this contemporary world I might lose focus of what I am created to do, what I'm created to accomplish, the vision on which God has placed inside me, the purpose on which He has placed inside me. And so if you are also in that dilemma of trying to figure out what is the right thing that you were created for, I think this book simplifies the 5 key points, the 5 purposes, the five guys, you can see 5, the most important purpose that God has created you for. The purpose, like to worship Him, to fellowship with others, to be of service to the church, to the people around you, and all that. And then the purpose, the other purpose goes on. I mean, there are 5, guys. There are 5. So be sure to worship, to fellowship, to discipleship, to learn more, to become like Jesus, and then to serve. And then the last one was to, guys, don't be putting me on the camera and then I cannot remember the last one. To spread the good news. To spread the good news. It doesn't matter if you're an entrepreneur or what. You can use the place that you have to just spread the good news of the Bible, and of the good news of the Bible. And then the next episode that I think was interesting this year was the episode with my friends and family. And season 3, episode 8, where I had Jerry, I had Edison, I had Freddie, and I had Jerry on the podcast, and we talked about the whole journey. I think it's good if you listen to it because it's interesting, because later on we celebrate the 4 years and we talked much about the podcast, but in this episode we talked more about friendships, and we talked about how to nurture friendship, because based on practicality, how we are nurturing our friendships and growing into becoming a family. That's 2, right? I think the next will be with Rosanna, where we talked about how your mindset can break your life, and then later on compile it with the self-care episode. And I think these 2, they become one, and they complement each other, and so I think it's important, because the mindset is important, but the way that you take care of your mind, you take care of your body, you take care of your spirit, you take care of the whole you, is very important to you becoming the person whom you have always envisioned to be. And then that's 3, right? Not yet 2. Hey, guys, can I compile again 2, maybe, or 3 in one? The design beyond products, which I did with Faye, and then the one I did with Alicia. I think the creativity aspect is very important, and I think I do not take it for granted, because all of us have creative mindset and we want to nurture creativity. And so I think it's very important to know how the real traits of creativity and how to nurture your creative being, your creative side. And then the fifth for you to listen to, the favorite, is how to get rich strategically, financial literacy with our money, and then compile it with episode 50, where I did with business without excuses. Guys, if you listen to these 2, they are complementing each other, and they are powerful in a way that if you are directing yourself towards financial, if you want to be financially free, there are things that you must do, right? There are things that you must proceed or something. And so these 2, financial literacy 101 with our money, it was episode 18, and then the episode 50, business without excuses, and then add on top of that, add business leadership lessons, the one I did from the book of Nehemiah, and the one from Dino, the one from Dino. If you compile this into one and you listen to them, I think you are great. You are great, brother, sister, friend, colleague, listener. You are great. Why do I say you are great? Because these 4 episodes are filled with practical things in our today's world that you can use to become financially free, become successful in your business, and become a great leader at the same time. You get it? And these are the three aspects. To be a great leader, you need to be a good servant, right? To be successful in your business, you have to be visionary, leadership, good leader, and all that, and be good at financial management or know how to manage people, right? And then financial literacy now teaches you on how to behave, to manage your finances, that you are able to really showcase, your success and all that. So these five these are the, you should listen to these. I hope on the screen you can see the list again. Yeah, I've compiled them. Some have 2 in them, some category have 2 in them, have 3 in them, 4 in them, but altogether these are my favorite episodes for this year. I hope that you can, if you haven't listened to the podcast at all, try to start with these 5 for this year. And so after all these all this talking, I know you are asking why I didn't mention 51, as networking is important, but I mean, it all comes later. But I think this year I try to really live to the idea of planting seeds of personal growth, where I just want you as a listener to grow with me, slowly become better with me. Because the same way I'm listening to other people, I'm learning. The same way I read books, I learn. The same way I engage in conversations, I learn. The same way that I watch some contents on YouTube, some documentaries, some informative videos. The same way I watch comedy. I am learning, I am entertaining myself. So I'm learning and having fun while doing it. Because these conversations that I engage with people, I think they are very crucial. And I believe that as a young person, you also want to become great someday. And so if you want to become great someday, podcasts are one of the interesting spaces that you can use to help yourself grow, become better. And so be sure to listen to these episodes, and I hope you enjoyed this season 3 of the SelfSeed Podcast. And I would really love to hear your comments, guys. I would really love to hear your comments, people. I would love to hear your comment personally, not looking at any other person. Just you who is listening, who is watching. I would love to hear your comment about this season. And maybe you can share what you want for the next season. But in my mind, I have a good outlook of what I want for the next season. But I want the next season, I pray that it becomes the next stepping stone towards success, towards empowerment, towards growth, towards planting seeds of development and all that. And so the season 4, I don't know, I haven't really concluded if I'll change for it to become season 4 or I'll just decide to continue season 3, episode 53. So I hope by January, when you're listening to the new episode, you won't be shocked if it is season 3, if it is still season 3, or it is season 4. But I hope you're ready to enjoy more contents, and I hope you really enjoyed these ones. And if there's any place that I should improve, I should modify, I love learning from advice, from constructive criticism. So I would love to improve on aspects, but the greatest of all, thank you. I humbly thank you. Thank you all. Thank you for listening. Thank you for always taking your time to let me know about what you think about the podcast episodes, about what you think about my business endeavors, about my pick on my mind. Try to know what I am thinking. Thank you all, and thank you for constantly being able to showing patience and showing dedication towards this growth. So if you have noticed on YouTube, we have changed from Ebo Daily, posting the podcast episodes on Ebo Daily, and now we have SelfSeed Podcast. So remember to also subscribe to the SelfSeed Podcast on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and so on. Just be sure to add it to your favorites. And so until next year, I would like to say Happy New Year in advance. Happy New Year. May your year be of grace. May your year be great. May you achieve everything that you planned. And may just God be with you to the end of the year. And as we said in these new goals, let's go together. Let's go together. Once again, let's do great things. God bless you all, and thank you for your time.